He is honest, kind, and friendly to all. We are proud to have Sabino represent our class as a full pub leadership team member with the Tech. Sabino's future is bright, and we feel lucky to have spent 2 years with him. And Mr. Evans, our music teacher, says Sabino is a kind, thoughtful, and respectful young man and approaches music time with interest and attention to whatever we are doing. Recently, he has excelled in learning the names of the lines and spaces in the treble clef. And Mrs. Steinmetz, our music teacher, was friendly, kind, and considerate. He works hard and strives to do his best in all. John, throughout his life. Thank you, parents, for doing such a great job. Gracias a los padres, para sus instructions. Ahora, third and fifth grade student. And then real quickly, if I can put in a plug for an event coming up in March, inviting all of you, as well as all of you out there, to the 6th Annual Margaret County Spelling Bee, the premier academic event in this county. This month is going to be one of our best conferences this year, so look forward to seeing everybody there.
We met as a chapter and decided that we wanted to find an alternative to state FBLA this year. State FBLA is important here. It's in person again this year, but in order to attend, the students have to have proof of vaccination or negative COVID testing before being able to attending the conference to go to the conference, as well as working in the conference itself. And so we felt like we could plan some other learning activities outside of the classroom, outside of the competitive events that would be just as meaningful for them. And so using the same time frame, the last week of March, beginning the first Friday in April, so it'd be a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we would like to travel to Boise State University School of Business, Idaho State University School of Business, and then we have the opportunity to meet with a lot of entrepreneurs that have started their own businesses. A couple of them are e-commerce or online businesses, which is very popular right now. One sells jewelry and one does graphic design, as well as a couple entrepreneurs in the healthcare industry. And so we feel like we can have a great trip traveling to Idaho, where it's a little bit calmer, a little bit safer, and you don't have to have the restrictions of being in Portland. And Portland's not as safe as it was when we went 3 years ago. Idaho. And so we feel like traveling to Idaho is a better option for us. I've been working with Mr. Jackson actually. So we're still going to do Oregon SCLA next year, but we're actually going to compete in Idaho GPA starting next year. It's the same thing as SCLA. It's just called American is what Idaho uses. So our regional competitions will be in Parma and state is in Boise, which is a lot more cost effective and a lot better for our students. So I'm excited for that. That's the first part. And then second part, we had a trip planned to Florida in the fall to take my leadership team to the National Leadership Conference, and it was canceled because of COVID. We planned an alternative trip that we ended up not being able to attend because we weren't able to come in front of the board, so totally took that trip. So I'd like to take those 6 students to Dallas to the National BPA Conference the first week of May 4th to the 8th. We had already purchased our plane tickets and things like that, so we have to use that on those students anyway, and so it's an opportunity for us to be able to go to a national conference and be able to experience what BPA is going to be like for the rest of our students that are going to be starting.
I do. Okay, how many would you be taking to Boise State with
Idaho State, it would be 27.
and 7?
Will they get to stay in the dorms or will they stay in?
No, we'll be in hotels. Because they'll stay in
Sounds like it.
Sounds so exciting.
It's fine. Do we need to vote on this?
Yeah, over interest.
Okay, all in favor of these 2 trips as they are presented? We have to make, would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept it as presented.
Okay, all in favor? Motion is granted. You may go on your trip.
We like reports.
Yes, can you give us a report?
To hear how it went.
Yes, please.
Presentation, I'm sorry.
Oh, she did great.
I just put the yard off.
Okay, next we're going to have a presentation from OEA, and I think Mrs. Woodruff, are you going to do that?
Actually, I will.
Okay, or Mr. DeLeon?
So I emailed you a letter on behalf of the NEA, written by Ms. Woodruff here, and had some input from the staff. Basically, at this time, from my understanding of visiting with Ryan this morning, it's kind of a mute point because it sounds like the calendar that you will be presented today is different than the one we were preparing for. So that early release is not on there. I just asked that, as we move forward, that we ask administrators to collaborate with staff, so that way we can move forward in a way that we know that, voices are heard from within the school district. I know in the past there's been calendar committees and things like that, and so I think what it will do is avoid the situation we were in just recently with having to submit a letter of concerns and things like that. So that's just a thought. I think that was everything, right?
Yeah, I mean, this year's calendar was some significant differences from previous years. I don't know if you guys have made any inquiries to see whether those were good or not. So I think that would be an idea before we adopt a new one.
So, but other than that, any questions from you, any of you?
Thank you for your input.
I have a question on the calendar. I'm just wondering what the timeline is and what the process is moving forward. Calendar adoption.
Like when it would be adopted or something?
Yep, and when new ones will be available for parents as well.
It could be adopted tonight, or you could postpone it until March, but certainly no later than the March meeting. We want to adopt the calendar for the following year. Hopefully tonight we can have some answers, so anyway.
So we'll go over that later in the agenda.
Do you also mean you would like to give input to the administration and to the potential calendar committee?
Yeah, I just like to see what's being proposed. I haven't drafted, you sent me that out, and I was like, what's
Yeah, let's
still up there?
Okay.
That's typically why we have school board meetings. You know, honestly, if you think about a calendar in a community, you have thousands of people giving input on a calendar. There's no way to meet everybody's. It's not that we don't want people's input, but we do try to have an open process at board meetings where we present it, and if people are at the board meeting or even not at the board meeting, you can call and look at the minutes and ask for input. So we would love to certainly be open and hear people's thoughts about it. So.
So we'll discuss it later.
I will do, we will present the calendar during my superintendent's report.
Okay,
So
all right, thank you. Next from OSEA, Ms. Cindy Ramos.
Okay, I'm here to discuss the COVID paid leave. And January 24th, you guys had a work session, and in that work session, there were, one of the topics discussed was the COVID paid leave that the classified had requested. And there's a couple things that I'd like to address and clarify with you guys. And one of the things is, it appears that you guys have this assumption that we have a sick leave pool. We do not have a sick leave pool. In our previous contract, we had a pool bank that classified could put their sick time into, another classified could request and take leave, take time from that pool. Well, and that's if they met the criteria, but that doesn't exist anymore. What we have in our contract now is language that allows a classified to donate time to another classified if they meet the criteria. And for example, I can donate time to, well, let's say Chris over there, and if she has exhausted all of her paid leave and if she meets the criteria. So that's what we have. We do not have a pool of time that people can just request and take from. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clarified. It just sounded like you guys were talking about this pool that we have, which we do not have. And also, this language that we have in the contract, it was set up for hardship. So what I've given you is a language from our contract. So in Article 8.6, letter A, it says on an as-needed basis, employees may donate accrued sick leave when an employee in a bargaining unit or their family member has, as defined by FMLA, is suffering from a serious or catastrophic illness or injury. Meaning, like, if cancer comes into the family, if there's a serious accident, things of that nature where people are having to stay home an extended amount of time, and they need that help. That's what this was created for. It wasn't created for something like COVID, and people are needing to stay home when they would otherwise be at work because of quarantine for this or that reason. So I just wanted to make that clear. So you guys are sitting in this work session talking about this pool and this asking Darren to remind us of this pool, but the thing is that we had already had this conversation with Darren and Ryan back in November. They brought up this, well, why don't you guys, how about this pool? And we had explained to them exactly what I'm just now telling you. And so that was something that we felt like that should have been shared at the moment, but for some reason it was not. And another thing is there was concern about about people abusing the pool. And so in the letter that I had submitted to you in December, it states at the end of that letter the exact wording that we had put in the MOU that we had presented to Darren and Ryan back in October. So it states, and in the wording, it states if quarantine is recommended by the healthcare professional. I know you guys are concerned that maybe people will just say, oh, I'm sick and I can't come in and blame COVID, but I mean, we're not interested in asking for something that's gonna be easy for people to just abuse. But it is something, this is, you know, it's real. People are having to stay home because of this and that reason, and we just want, we would like to create it in a sense, or we hope that we had created it in a sense that people can, you know, if with the healthcare professional, the nurse, whoever, if they're saying that they're needing to stay home, they're quarantined, this is what how do I say this? This is how, this is what this leave would cover if you're required to stay home by, you know, because of the health professional illness states you have to stay home. So, that was, basically, you guys have any questions?
Anybody have any questions?
Misunderstanding.
And is this something you're saying would basically only affect this year, or would you want this to be in going forward years?
Well, you know, we didn't have a deadline on it, right?
Who knows how long COVID's gonna last? Who knows how long we're going to be in this type of situation where we're gonna be required to leave when, you know, we're told that we're quarantined? Who knows? Do you know? Okay.
So do we need to vote on this, or
Well,
so we can give?
so
an
what we did in
answer?
the past is if we make no changes, there doesn't need to be a vote or a motion. We want to, if there wants to be discussion, if you want to ask questions, discuss. I know this is the multiple times that Cindy has come, so I think we do need to make some sort of decision so that we have an answer. I did some research today, not today, I've done it for quite a while, but again, I checked again today, and there are no other school districts in Malheur County that are granting additional leave. There are other districts, perhaps, in the state, but no schools. I don't know about any other entities granting this. It is a complicated procedure because the classified union association is asking for it, but we wouldn't do it for just one, right? If we granted additional COVID leave, it wouldn't be just for one of our associations. It would likely, whatever we decided would apply to both.
So last time we talked about quarantining, what requirements are there on quarantining now?
It has been changing. It has been at a very moving target. So right now, I probably need some help on this, but I think depending on if you've been vaccinated and if you're showing symptoms, I think the longest, in those situations, the longest is 5 days, I believe. If you haven't been vaccinated and you have symptoms, then it's 10 days. Is that right, Ryan? I'm looking at you because I don't know. Our nurse is not here, but honestly, it's been tough to keep track of that. And so we have discussed, if you're vaccinated, you have every employee, every adult here has the opportunity to be vaccinated. Therefore, should not be quarantined for longer than 5 days. But
And that's if they have COVID, not if they've been exposed.
if they have symptoms, right? So in Cindy's or in the association's defense request, that has changed multiple times through the year. So I think at the time in October when we began discussing this, it was a 14 or 10 or 14 days. So it was longer, right? And so thankfully things have relaxed, but through this school year, that's not always been the case. So it has been a moving target. It has been very difficult to figure out. I just know that other school districts have decided not to do it because it is extremely complicated in tracking leave. To do that from the school district's point of view, we aren't, I don't know, if anybody has done any other research, that's what I wanted to say. Or has any other questions?
Jeremy, what you are asking is that if you've been vaccinated and boosted and are exposed,
There's no
but
quarantine required.
show no symptoms,
Right.
there's no
There's no
quarantine.
quarantine required.
That's my understanding now too.
So and I do want to say too, I apologize if I'm interrupting, that typically what what they're asking for in the classified association does, well, it does, every association, it's not budgeted for. We haven't budgeted for it this year. It's not financially what we had planned for.
This is something that, we know that the district has received millions of dollars for COVID-related things. And we feel like this is COVID-related. I mean, like I said, people have had to stay home or are going to have to stay home because of this or that reason that has to deal with COVID. And I mean, that's the way we see it, that you guys have received money for things that are COVID related.
My question is, I think I've talked about this before. I mean, I don't think just throwing a number at it's going to fix it. And I think what it needs to be is the core needs to be fixed. My opinion is that granted the state and the nation is constantly throwing out their ideas of when to quarantine and all this other stuff. But I just think a standard needs to be set. And that way, you have some standard to go by when you start talking about quarantining, kind of whether somebody's exposed. We already know about that, at least what I've seen anyway, is, people vaccinated or unvaccinated are getting infected no matter what. The rates, I'm not here to talk about rates or questions on that because I don't know that. I'm not a scientist or a doctor, but people are getting infected both ways. And so I think there should be a standard that needs to be set that follows this, that you can do, that can follow the state laws or the state rules on it. I say state laws, but the mandate. That being said, if we were to give 80 hours, what happens when it's gone? Or 100 hours or 200 hours? Like, what happens when that's gone? We'll be back in the same spot. So my thought is just you need to fix the problem at the core. I'm not necessarily you guys, obviously, but that's just my thought on it.
Do you know, is this a common practice with businesses to be offering that to their employees, like from a financial standpoint? Or do you know of other entities that are doing something like this? No.
Yeah, I don't think any other businesses in Malheur County are doing it. So do we take no action or do we take a vote?
I think it's best.
So just for clarification, the issue is not so much the fact that sitting at this moment, it's more the fact that people had to use their sick leave when they weren't sick previously, is what you're saying. So falling under like the requirements of quarantine now, many of those people wouldn't have had to go out because of the quarantine changes
at the time.
Yeah. Okay, so that's what I just want to make sure.
A point of clarification. When you read to us the on an as-needed basis, and you went into is suffering from a serious or catastrophic illness or injury, a catastrophic event or illness can be having to leave for quarantine, into quarantine. This was negotiated or whatever before we had such a thing as COVID and quarantine. And some of these things can be, with your union modified or whatever. I know that when I was employed, that we were asked at different times if we would donate some of our sick time, which we all did because, it's a fellow employee and it's a difficult thing. So I'm just saying that perhaps you need to look again at simply the definitions.
An MOU or something could be written to have some understanding to open that up.
May I make a comment on that? I mean, I guess the point that I'm hearing is the district was given X amount of money for COVID relief. And I believe there was a percentage, and there's probably verbiage somewhere, I've seen it, about a certain percentage of that supposed to go to certain things, right? Certain areas. When we say most other schools aren't doing this, right? Well, most other schools got about $2,400, right? Individuals, whereas what, 500. So there's some money left over where you can say, hey, you know what? Maybe not give them cash money, but when people need it, we're there to help them with those extra funds that we didn't overspend, let's say, right? But that's how you want to look at it. You know, when I think of that, this has got 500 when most schools got 17, 18. I don't know what the exact number, but I know it was more than us. I mean, there's some leftover funds. You know, what it costs to replace me for a day if I'm sick, probably $243, you know, if I'm sick. So I'm guessing the money we saved by not giving all the employees the 500, which was, I'm pretty sure the 500, I'm planning to say, there's some extra there. And maybe those are the dollars you look at. Because I know they were considered to be used, right? Maybe those are the dollars you say, you know, Ontario got 1,700, we got 5. You know, let's use those funds.
None of
Those-
it. Let me interrupt. I don't mean to interrupt you, Bobby. If you're finished, I apologize. None of that money was designated for the purpose. We had to get special permission from ODE to give that, and because some of our neighbors had done that, there was some pressure for us to do it too. And I know we had considered larger sums in the board at the time, which is a very different board than who sits here today. So the money was not designated for that purpose to begin with. We asked special permission from ODE and it was granted, and we wanted to because we were grateful and continue to be very grateful to our staff for, some people really never took any time off during the pandemic. I mean, teachers did have to go home and taught from home and not really upset their traditional way of doing things or instructional assistants. I mean, obviously there was our cafeteria workers, food still had to go out, but kids weren't here. So there was a lot of things. And so I hear you that we did want to give some recognition for the effort that it took to alter the way you did business. So.
And the other thing on that is I don't know if it was always equitable in terms of like people being able to work from home versus not work from home, right? You could say some positions were able to work from home and others weren't, right? So like in October, I took 9 days of sick leave, you know, and then my wife took probably 9 plus whatever, because by the time she could come back to work, my kids had COVID. So we had to stay home with the kids for COVID. My kids missed a month of school, meaning somebody stayed home for those 30 days, right? And so that's just an example, right? And what I'm saying is I know of other individuals within the school district were able to work from home, right? And so, I mean, for me, when I look at it, was it fair for me to have to not work from home when I was totally able to, and I did, right? Reply to emails. Matter of fact, I sat in the school parking lot in a Zoom meeting so I could get Wi-Fi. You know, didn't go into the school, but I was like tennis courts, you know what I mean? So I mean, honestly, I don't think you're asking too much. I don't know what those numbers look like. I mean, heck, if I get 4 days back, that would be nice. I know I worked at this 4 days from home, even though I, you know, suffered from all other things from COVID, pneumonia and whatnot, you know, so.
When you were working from home, did you not get to count your time that you were working?
No, I didn't.
Could you have?
I was told we were not able to. So, but I mean, I'm a counselor, right?
Of course, of course. I was just wondering if the option
Yeah, no,
was
I'm
there.
just telling you that was just my circumstance. I could not personally just do that, right? Walk away and say, well, I'm using, there were days I tried, believe me, because I'm like, if they're gonna pay me, why am I gonna, well, because I'm a counselor, I care about, I'm from this, that's why you just keep doing it, it doesn't matter, you know, so. That, yeah.
So if the board would like to make a decision tonight, I think because they've been here multiple
I think we
times, we
need to give
probably
them a
do need to
decision.
give an answer. Or say the answer may be, do we want to talk about it more? I don't think I don't know.
How many days are you looking at? Is there a specific number of days?
No, we just,
They've had no recommendations.
yeah, but I mean, we're open for, discussion on that. It doesn't have to be.
I mean, I think you would have to look at what the stand that you're going to ask us to quarantine. Regardless, right now, my understanding, vaccinated or not vaccinated, there might be a standard amount, 5 days. And if you're not vaccinated, it extends, correct?
I don't
with, well, with symptoms. Is that what they're
I
saying?
mean, I think that would be fair to
I would
have
recommend
as maybe part of the equation.
Susie, I would recommend that we table this for right now and get the additional information that we need as to what the quarantine states now. And, find out what other districts are doing other than just our local district. And perhaps look at it again. And at the same time, I do wonder about whether or not your sick leave donation could be effective in this instance. I mean, this is one of those emergency type situations that could not be foretold back in 2019 when this was written. So that would be my recommendation. I don't know what anyone else thinks.
Does anybody want to go along with what Pat says, or does anyone want to go
I got one
along
more
with it tonight?
question, and just out of curiosity for quarantine. Is there more to quarantine than just vaccinated, not vaccinated? Is it not mask, not mask, 15 minutes, exposure, social distancing? Do not all those things apply in your guys' workforce as well? So personal responsibility, quite a bit of it. That's the next question. Do you know what I mean? I run a workforce and we've managed to never quarantine our whole entire office, even though lots of people have had it. All right, but that's another, you know what I mean? There's more into play than just that. You understand what I'm saying?
So are you saying, are the
Well,
school
I'm saying
implementing
it's
what's
some-
supposed to be implemented? Is that
That's
what
what I'm asking, yes.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, that's enough.
Or is the
that is a
person,
question.
themselves as well?
Well,
That'll be my
and-
next question.
And that's,
And then when you talk about monies for things, there's also been monies given to most everyone, probably a lot of people in this room, for COVID relief that maybe never had COVID, never, you know what I mean? Not from the school, but from other sources as well, that were for these very things, for people, you know what I mean? So some of these same
Individual
people may have received federal funding, whatever it is,
Tax credits.
that was for that.
So,
Whether they used it for that or not, that's up to them, or that was their personal choice.
But that was the purpose of it.
That was the purpose. That was absolutely the purpose of it.
You're referring to the stimulus checks that everybody
Yes. Correct. Correct. That would be, those were directly for people, not able to work, things like that. That's what, now granted, like we said, equitability, I mean, some people got them that absolutely didn't need them, I guarantee it, right? So. There's a lot of factors, you know what I mean? And obviously, we did give COVID leave for a while, correct?
Yeah.
COVID leave. If I remember, we even extended it a month beyond what it was originally set to expire.
I believe it was federally protected through the end of 2020, and the board voted to extend it from January through the end of the school year.
Correct, that's right. It wasn't till the end of the school
So
year.
we
So we've already
extended
done it.
Last,
Yeah, we've
and
already
some people
extended it.
used it and there were some people that never used it.
right, just like the checks themselves, right? Maybe they used it for that reason, maybe they didn't. But they might have still gotten the check. Those are just a couple of more factors to think about, you know what I mean? In it as well. So it's pretty complicated.
But the truth is, you extended it then, knowing that COVID existed, regardless of what, because people were getting stimulus then, right?
But the quarantining was a lot different back then.
But it still exists. So what I'm getting at, you did it because it was the right thing. And so basically, in your mind, that's why you voted to do it, right?
Correct.
And so I think you still sit in the same situation, it just may not be as many days, right? Because of the situation
So-
changed.
I don't know, well, it's also changed on the other end of it too, right? It literally doesn't exist for millions of people. You know what I mean?
From what I can see, we're all not going to agree, so do we want to postpone it or do we want to vote?
I would like to see it. I would like to postpone it or table it and get more information about what other, as I said, about what other districts are doing, because other entities have been faced with this.
I prefer to vote and just give Cindy an answer since she's come to us several
Okay.
times. What do you guys think?
How many employees have we actually quarantined so far this year?
Well, boy, that's a hard one to say. I don't know the number on that, but the ones who we can identify, and I don't know if Christy's back here. She might kill me for trying to bring her into this, but she provided me, and I presented last month. I think I said 5, but that's actually 7 that we could identify who used their leave that we could identify because of COVID, whether they were quarantined or a family member was quarantined. 7 people exhausted their sick leave because of it. So and I don't know if they were classified or if they were certified. I don't know.
That's just employees.
Yes, yeah. 7 employees out of 190, 188. And not that the percentage matters, it's employees, right? So I think part of the issue that we're dealing with is the associations, and they haven't said this, but as I'm kind of contemplating what this looks like, it's like people are saying it's not my fault, I've been asked to quarantine. There could be some argument to say, well, you weren't wearing your mask, you didn't social distance, you didn't get vaccinated, all that argument, right? Or you went to Walmart, or you went to the football game, or all this sort of stuff, who knows? But whose responsibility is it? Is it the district's responsibility that people got quarantined? Yes, no. Is it the individual's responsibility that they got quarantined? Yes, no. Right? Whose is it? Whose responsibility is it to try to pay? I think what I hear Bobby saying, and perhaps Cindy, is that they would like the district to show some good faith effort for the work that they have done from the district's or perhaps the board's perspective. We've done a lot of that already. And so I just don't think, I think it's extremely complicated to approve additional leave right now. We are not budgeted for it. And to say that we have received stimulus money, we have, but there were very specific purposes for that. We have put those budgets out for people to look at. If you would like to have them, I certainly Crystal and I and Ryan, we could all present those to you for what they're being spent on. At the time that we decided on the $500 payment versus the 17 that Ontario or the 2,000 that Vail received, the board at the time was very clear. It was over in the auditorium. I remember it very clearly because there was some frustration among our teachers and staff members that we got 500 instead. It felt like a kick in the shin rather than a, hey, you got $500. Well, it's not as much as somebody else. True. But the board's decision at the time was we want to remodel our high school. Our high school is 40 years old. There's some things, the air filtration system. So perhaps the employees feel like, hey, on our back, we're gonna, again, upgrade the school. Maybe people feel that way, I don't know. But I think the board made the decision at the time. There was some frustration, but I think in the end, it's a decision that I think is gonna be good for our school district long-term. The question I'm getting at is whose responsibility is it about quarantine? Is it the district's responsibility to make up the challenge that people face, or is it ours, is the question.
I think there's 2 parts to that, right? So you're saying previous quarantine was not something you could control. Moving forward, it is something that we have a little bit more guidance on the direction. So you're saying that previously you didn't have control, but moving forward now you do have control, but it doesn't change the fact that previously you had to use your time? Is that, I'm just saying there's like 2 parts to it?
I'm confused.
I can see that.
She's the vice president.
Yeah, she didn't, I got it.
I can see moving forward, you would have more control, but for the past, obviously not. But moving forward, yes, because things are going to potentially go back to normal. There are going to be more routine things that weren't into play before, correct? And so, yes, you could streamline it a little bit. But right now, I know that we have people that they're on their 3rd wave of quarantine and they are out of sick leave. They are out of, personal leave, and they don't have anything. They don't have anything. What do you do for them? And they're the people that don't get to do the Zoom sessions. They're the people that are in the classroom that have to be with the kids. They don't get the opportunity to do the Zoom because there's nothing to Zoom. You can't Zoom a recess.
How many individuals are we talking about that are currently affected?
7.
Just those seven.
Well-
These are seven who've used
You know, I'm
everything.
going.
I'm just
Well, not
asking.
that- I guess at this time, but as we move forward and as, everything's still the way it is, it'll be more down the road, I'm sure.
And I have to save my sick leave for quarantine time. I can't afford to be sick outside of that because I will use up all my quarantine time on sick leave. I won't be able to be sick any other time. And if I give it away, then I'm out even more.
My question, because I don't know, does sick leave carry over from year to year that you can, that theoretically, some of it could have been banked? Or that if you don't use it now, you could use it next year?
One sick leave per month.
Okay.
They were hired in 2019. And you used it all up. Or are currently hired now.
Do you have a question, Mr. Hunter?
Yeah, this discussion seems to me really short-termist. You're talking about today's quarantine requirements for today's Omicron variant. Who knows what the next, so many people worldwide who aren't vaccinated, you know, it's going to be more variants. The next one might have 25% fatality rate. Who knows? We know there are going to be, it could be H5N1 flu next. We know there are going to be more of these things. So when you have your discussion, so that we're not going to do this every month, every time there's a new variant and the regulations change. Could you try and think about taking a long-term view so that we're not having to re-talk about this every time? Is that possible?
Going back to Mrs. Moranoff's, let's get some more data. Let's table it for now.
Well, actually, I think the problem needs to be figured out one way or the other. The employees deserve that. I'm open to discuss it more.
We could have a study session, I don't know, a week from today or.
Well, we have one scheduled on the
We have one.
28th, I think.
We already have one scheduled, so we can just add it to that.
So I guess the consensus is to table it and we'll have it, talk about it at our next work session on the 28th.
Yep.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ramos. Okay, next we'll have our superintendent's report.
Well, I will try to be brief but informative at the same time. So first, happy Valentine's to everybody. Yes, I've taken a lot of heat for having a meeting on tonight. So whose fault is it anyway? Thank you all for being here. We appreciate you. Several things, as many of you have heard, the state of Oregon, if you'll get to, Lord, you have my superintendent. I'm going to jump to number 2 to start. The mask rules from ODE, conjoint release from ODE and OHA, Oregon Health Authority. So recently was released that no later than March 31st, schools will have their own autonomy to make these decisions. And so the board will need to be voting on whether to unmask our students or to continue to mask. It's not a complete release of all the power they've taken, and I've tried to share some information with you so you know that. If we do vote to not mask our students any longer, there are additional stringent requirements that we'll have to abide by, more social distancing. But I'm currently working with the Malheur County Health Department as well as our ESD and other superintendents in the county to understand what ODE is saying. I meet with the superintendents in the county on Wednesday. So we will have a discussion about this and perhaps some strategies for how that would look at each district. Some districts have already gone on record and say, we're going to unmask. I know Vail District has already done that. They've already made a resolution. They're not going to wear masks after March 31st. Could be before that, depending on state numbers. But, you accept the consequences or at least the criteria that the state has given you if you do that. So we will talk about that as that comes up. I wanted to give a tennis court repair update. At this time, we are not able to do any repairs before the season. So I actually took a field trip myself out there. I did it previously. So Bobby left. I know Bobby's a tennis guy. Jeremy, I know you're a tennis guy. I don't want to start just pointing at everybody, but I went out there and not every court has cracks in it. Only some do, right? And some of them, I would say probably 2 have cracks only the length of the doubles line. As you know, a tennis court has singles lines painted and doubles lines, which are the wider ones. So some of they're going to be playable. I've talked to the high school principal and vice principal. I don't know how much you've talked with Jenna, Mr. Jackman, our athletic director, but it feels like we have enough good courts that we can move things around to have competitions and practices. There are a couple that do have lines going through the singles. They're not very drastically offset. They're pretty, it is a crack. So if a ball hits it, it could go ski-wampus. In that case, we'd probably just have to say, redo that serve or that hit. Hopefully those are not where we're going to be playing our championship matches on those. But we do have plenty of some courts. So of the 7 courts, we do have some that are very playable without those offset cracks. So Jesse is currently getting good prices on how to repair, but researching places that have had long-term success with repairs. So I don't have those yet, but I will get that to you as soon as I do. Calendar. I have invited our guest speaker for the superintendent's report to talk about calendar.
I appreciate the buffer in there between calendar and COVID leave. Thank you. As you can see, so this is the new calendar proposed, and we're proposing it to the board tonight. And as you guys can see, and you know, I had a presentation kind of like, I think it's actually it's extremely basic. It mirrors this year. We still have 165 student days. The big differences are based on teacher input, classified, admin, you know, things like 2 weeks for Christmas, not having that weird Thursday off and Veterans Day, which we can control anyway. All of the quarters are now more equal than they've ever been. So that was always kind of a pain of ours. But as you can see, I mean, the end is before Memorial Day, which we always try to hit. I mean, so those little things, that's the reflection you guys will see on the calendar. There's not much of a change from this year. So pretty basic.
We have reduced our teacher in-service.
Yes, we reduced the teacher in-service days. And really the ones that are on there besides the beginning of the year, we have the October 7th and the April 7th. Those are county PD days. And the other 2, we have the one in December 9th and April 21st, so the Don Walker and the Calhoun. So that's why you have those.
Why did you guys choose to reduce the amount of in-service days? Wouldn't that be making it harder for teachers to get the things done that they need to prepare?
So, and the big part about those PD days is that a lot of the feedback was that they're overwhelming us on PD days, or they're wasting our time on PD days. And so what we're actually doing is we're going back to trying to use our Mondays more effectively and making sure that teachers are working on this Monday. You know, they get time to meet PLCs and do that. And the other one is just building. And so really maximizing our time on Mondays. And so we don't have to take that time. It's better consistency for our community. So it's not like, okay, is this Friday on? Is this Friday off? We're as consistent as possible in this.
So in the letter that we got from the union, they talked about a lot of time being taken away from the elementary teachers. Is that going to be given back to them? Because as a former elementary teacher, if I had to have my afternoon recess taken and my 15 minutes before, I'd quit.
So, and that's scheduling, which is different than calendar, right?
No, what I'm saying is if that's given back to the teachers, then this will work. But if they still have to do that, plus.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Well, we had talked about an earlier release Monday to give time for teachers to PLC. But in talking with a lot of our employees, they are not in favor of that. They feel like there's enough time. So we had discussions. You saw that in the letter if you did read that. It's all that you take it from there.
And as far as kind of scheduling out, COVID, there was a big part of COVID on those things. Like I was talking to Mr. Murray today about it again. And again, we're not going to go into schedule like the 15 minutes early. We had to move that into classrooms for breakfast. We could not run them in Mac Hall. We had spacing issues. We just could not do that for breakfast in the morning. So kids, when they got there, instead of huddled outside on the crisscross. No, they go, absolutely, they eat breakfast before school. And so, I know because my kids do. I walk them down there every day. And so, but
They have them start eating breakfast at 7:45, but they
Yeah.
don't have to start eating breakfast.
that's it. They come in, they grab their breakfast and go. They go to classes.
Because that's the convenience of getting it, but they don't have to go in at 7:45.
And that's when school opens up. They have to get their breakfast. They have no other place they can eat their breakfast. They have to get their breakfast and go to the classrooms and start school day. Again, those kind of things, those are schedule issues that we talked about that we're working on next year. But again, calendar
So
wise,
it's not gonna change until next year.
so yeah, I mean, that's, again, I mean, Mary, which is great. I mean, this isn't time, we're talking about calendar, right? As far as scheduling and as far as what the elementary looks like, this is not the place that we're gonna do that.
Scheduling is a different issue, and I'm
Yeah.
currently working with Mr. Murray on that.
Yep. So again, calendar, that's what it looks like, very basic, as, 7:45 is to 3:45 is teacher's workday.
Huh.
Yeah.
You're gonna lose teachers.
I have a question. Have you guys ever, I honestly don't know, talked to maybe the athletic director or principal and said, we'd like to look at when football goes to Umatilla and volleyball goes to Umatilla. And that's a day where we say, hey, that's a tutorial Friday. Or district-wide in-service would be great. I don't want to be there anymore. Just kidding. So the athletic calendar, I can tell you 4 of us, at least maybe 5 teachers are going to be gone 2 days, maybe 3 to go to the state basketball tournament, right? And you're going to have subs for 4 or 5 classrooms, and you know how it is with subs. We have some amazing subs. We usually hire them to teach. So have you looked at, because it impacts teaching a lot and also attendance quite a bit, because if a kid knows that the football team's going to be gone and we're going to do something that day, they're not going. And you can look it up. It's not that hard. Like you guys know that. And I would say there was a calendar committee one time, a long time ago, and they presented some great options. And then bam, the sleight of hand came, and this other calendar that nobody had even talked about was what was presented and adopted. So to be the kind of pain in the butt, if you really want input, I would suggest a calendar committee, because there's so many different things that you can't manage all of it. You just can't. But there are some things I think you can modify and adapt around, and it would benefit everybody.
And this was absolutely created with input from admin. I mean, we sat down for days with AD, looking at all these dates and making sure everything kind of worked out. And so we did. I mean, this is kind of, as you guys know, like the 5th or 6th version. We sat down, we came up with an idea, we got input, right? And the biggest one was this early start Mondays, that we got input from teachers. We listened. It's no longer, we tried to do all those things, but I do think a committee would be kind of going forward would be a great idea. This year, that's kind of what we did, right? Feedback from you, let's change it, and then so that's the process we use. But everybody had a choice in that, yeah.
I will also say, a committee could be skewed too. If you get people with the same mindset with 4 people, right? Just throwing that out there. I'm a big fan of, just like I presented in the letter, survey. Here's the data. There's 53 employees took the survey, and this is what their voice is. If I pick, a certain 3 teachers, they might want to all try to, so I have to take these 3 teachers down a committee. So just throwing that out there as well.
Well, committees for input, right?
Yeah.
And saying, hey, this is our input, this is our, and then, that's where Dr. Johnson and the board takes that input and says, this is what we think is best. And so, so that's where this is a basic calendar. There's no real changes in this. It's actually, future work days, we're down to 187 now, or 188. So it's 2 less on there. So we try to kind of get those things worked into it, but if you mirror the 2, you'll just see that those are the big changes, so.
I just want to say, they made changes to a calendar because of teacher input, but the only reason they have teacher input is because Mr. De Leon, as the union president, was seeking feedback from teachers. they would have brought the same calendar today with early release, but no one wanted. Had Mr. De Leon not had Mary create the survey and send that information out. So,
The input did not come from administration.
right, the input.
Well, also, just so you know, I mean, I've heard a lot from you guys and have talked to Darren about it, and I think this was kind of in the work. I mean, we all hear your input too, and we like to hear it, we appreciate it. And like he said, this is the 4th or 5th version because of input that keeps coming back. And we're not adopting it until we know that, you know, this is what's gonna work. So please keep talking to us. This is informative. But we do pass on what we hear as well.
I do have to say, however, and just saying what was said there is we gave this to the unions to share with their members. That's how we do it. We're not trying to hide anything. So yes, it did come from administration.
And we absolutely did meet several times, as administration and our ad council, as they can attest to create what we have now. And so, I mean, like I said, you can talk to the administrators. We've had several conversations. This was not an isolated Darren and Ryan, and we gave it to you guys and we changed it. This was, we brought this and talked and created this.
Question.
Yeah.
In the vein of getting teachers' input or people's input in general, can you explain to me your guys' reasoning for not promoting 4-day weeks? Is there a reason behind that? I'd love to hear that.
I will speak to that.
Okay.
So a lot of, perhaps some of the discussion and rationale is what Mr. Sapp has spoken of, is we have a lot of people gone on Fridays for sports because of the league we live in, right? For the travel we have to do. In looking at the, you know, the numbers of people who go on those athletic trips, if it's an overnight trip for, you know, basketball, let's say, or some other, there's quite a few teachers and there's quite a few students going, but what percent of the student population is that? It's very small, right? We have 1,200 students, or just under 1,200 students. We have 188 employees, and if 7 or 8 of our employees leave and 60 of our students leave, that's a very small percentage of our 1,200 and for our 188. And we live in a poverty community where kids, I hate to say it this way, but it's the truth in some situations, is school is the best place for them to be that day. Not all, I wish it wasn't. I wish home was the best place for everybody to be, but in too many cases, it's not always. And so for me, I feel this poverty community relies on more instruction rather than less, more security rather than less for students, more food rather than less for students. Just because of the nature of our community, I feel very strongly that 5 days a week is what most of our kids need, the vast majority of our kids need. Now, if there's others who have better arguments, certainly I don't think I'm the smartest guy in the world. And if others have better arguments to convince me otherwise, but that's one of the strongest rationales I have for not considering 4-day week.
Have you considered a half-day Friday? That way the children will still be able to have somewhere to go. They'll have food for breakfast and lunch, and then just releasing them early? Is that an option at all?
That kind of went along with early release Monday, right? We're trying to get more, I don't know what the rationale for a half day would be. Is it just more tutorial time for kids?
I think that's what I've heard, is the idea would be that the afternoon would be available tutorial for kids who needed it.
But send some kids home. Hopefully parents are there, right? And anyway, I don't know, once you start altering people's schedules, which the early release Monday was that, and we heard you, and that was not a popular, favorable idea. So certainly we backed off. We heard you. We don't want to shove things down people's throats. It's not going to work for our community, right? And I don't know if the 4.5 day works for our community. I don't know. Has it been done before?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
If there's one thing that's been around longer than COVID, it's the calendar issue in Nessa. And I have enough of these colors, beautiful colored things to wallpaper my bathroom. And the discussion has gone on for years, right? 5 day, 4 day, half day tutorial, right? And I think one time when I was here, I said, we should base our decision on what the mission statement is for our school, right? And what is our mission statement? And we've had a lot of different opinions, right? But long ago, we came to a compromise several years ago where we kind of balanced every other Friday off. And I haven't been here for a couple years, but over those last few years, we've slowly slid away from that middle ground that we decided to meet on. And every year, there's just another couple days, another less few Fridays off. And if we want to serve all our demographics, we agreed long ago that maybe tutorials was a good place to do that. Because those who needed a secure place, those who needed additional instruction could be here. And it was a middle ground that balanced what the teachers wanted, what all parents wanted, what the administration wanted, and what the mission statement of the school was.
The kids need.
But we've slowly slipped away from that. And here we are again with 3 to 4 weeks of full weeks without a Friday. So consider everyone's perspective while meeting the mission statement of the school.
I never have lived, I have two different lives in this, as you know. I had 1995 to 2009, and I have 2019 going forward. I've never experienced in this a 4.5 or a 4-day week. Those years that I had, for the 14 years, and now the 3, I've never seen that, so.
But how successful were we as a school district during our 4-day week?
I don't know.
Very successful.
I don't know. I
That was
wasn't
when we
here.
had some of our best ratings.
I wasn't here, but yeah, okay, I have to look at that.
Didn't we do 4.5 days? I was class 2006, and I had a 4.5 day.
Yeah, I remember a 4.5 day week.
It seemed like
Because
much
life
got
was-
accomplished on the half days though.
It's the same as a
It was
Friday.
like one of the top 5 schools in the country on the 4.5 days.
Yes,
On 4.5?
and a 4 day.
There's all those plaques in the hallway, those were all from that time in high school. I don't know, I can't speak for the other
Are you
buildings.
saying like academically or sports?
Oh, it's kind of nice.
Oh,
Yeah,
So
I
Charlotte,
haven't
is
seen those, so I don't know.
hearing you, you're talking September. There's 5 continuous Fridays with no Friday off. Is that what you're saying?
Well, you look at February, you look at September. It's just, we came to a good balance where it kind of met what everybody wanted, because some people wanted 5 days, some people wanted 4 days. So we said, let's do every other week. It didn't work exactly every other week because of things that took place, but that was kind of the middle ground, right? I think Tutorial Friday worked really good for some people, and I think if you have people that need additional help, Tutorial was a great opportunity for them to meet that. And we're just, if I go back, there's calendar days where we were very successful, where the kids had 160 days of school, and we were very successful. And there's schools that are successful 5 days, there's schools that are successful 4 days, but you've been through this so many times, and it just seems like we're slipping away from where we met in the middle.
Mrs. Kane has a question.
We're pretty quick to follow what other districts are doing on a lot of other things, and we are like the only school district that's going 5 days a week. So there must be some success happening in other school districts for them to be considering this. So I just think it's a viable reason that we should also be considering it. And like they said, committee, you get your teachers involved, people who have been here long term. We have a lot of veteran teachers that would be valuable assets for this calendar committee.
I certainly don't want to follow what Ontario's doing just because of that. But you bring up a good point
The county.
to study. And every school is a little different, right? Every school does have its differences. This is new to me, Charlotte. I haven't heard your input, so. I don't know what we want to do.
Mr. Long?
Yeah, I'll just, not so much the calendar, I'll speak to why all the teachers kind of showed up. I don't know if this is normal or not, but I typically go with them. We were under the assumption that there was going to be an early release day calendar up for approval tonight. And I guess that didn't happen. So we're all a little confused because that's what was shared with us, that was on the table for tonight, and now that's gone. So the reason why we're here is because at the secondary level, we feel that daily instructional time is at a premium and it's pretty short anyway. And so for that to be shortened even more, we're here because we in fact want to go the other way. we want more daily instructional time, longer class periods, i.e. 7-period day. So that's why we came. Knowing that, just saying that, I want the board to hear that, and that's why the teachers are here. Okay? So that you guys hear that. And so in doing that, it will affect the calendar. I'm not going to talk to how many days, but I'm just saying at the secondary level, we want to increase the amount of instructional time per period. Right? That's what we are advocating.
So how many minutes would you be talking about to increase to? Just curious.
Right. Well, then it comes into the number of periods you offer in a day.
Correct.
Which is another discussion, right? We currently run the 8-period day. A 7-period day offers around 55-minute periods.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Which offers less, I mean, that's a big conversation because it changes things significantly.
In what way? In what way do you mean?
Number of credits earned.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, the number of, well, and another thing is that. Correct, yeah, so the number of electives that are available potentially. Could be impacted, we can still offer the same number of electives, but class sizes will be significantly smaller because the kids, you know, understand, there's less places for them to go. Or in fact, it could be bigger, right? So, right, but it might be hard because now students have to choose, they can't have all of it, right? So they can't go to ag, they can't go to weights, they can't go to art, okay? And Bible release or seminary or work release or whatever they have now, right? It starts narrowing things down. So it's just a big conversation, and we understand that. We just want the board to know as a consensus that's why these teachers are here, is we felt that class time was going to be shortened even more when in fact we're hoping it goes the other way, increasing instead of getting shorter. The calendar that was going to be proposed, we found out about it last week. According to the union, they got it on Friday afternoon, right? And we got it on like Tuesday, a week ago today, that it was going to be up for approval by you guys.
Susie, may I recommend that this sounds like it's something that needs to go back to the administration for discussion, not the calendar, because I recognize that we've got to move on. We've got a year ahead of us. But to discuss the length of days, to fit the length of periods to fit.
And that's something Mr. Jackman has worked with the high school and obviously middle school as well, elementary, right? I mean, it doesn't matter if there's 6 periods, 8 periods, right? It's their day, which is a scheduling issue. I will say this about the calendar where our early release was proposed. Is we did that because the union said, do not do PLCs during prep time, either give us an early release or a late start. That's why it was proposed, because that's what it was told that the teachers wanted. Previous years, it was told that's what we needed to do. And it was said no more. You either do this or this, and then so we proposed that. We heard, we went back. Does that mean? And so that's where this basic calendar is at. It was change is not good. We don't want to. It's just a basic calendar, and so there's nothing special about it. It's just basic, and that's again schedule and periods. Just back to the calendar. This is what it is. We can go back and look at it again if you guys want to look at it in March. But as you guys can see, it's just a very basic, square calendar. There's not anything else in that. Yep.
I like square.
Okay, so shall we move on to number 4?
I would just like to say one more thing about any potential calendar. I just want the board to know that teachers are required to work a certain amount of days and students are required a certain number of hours. And that's the driving factor behind the school calendar when it's all said and done. We can, modify days, adjustments, when vacations are, those kind of things. But those things have to be met, and I think everybody kind of understands them. So 5/8, 4/10s, whatever it is, those numbers have to be met. And that's kind of to the calendar that I'm speaking about, right? I think we should seriously take a look at attendance. and see which days are, I don't want to say the least attended, but have the least attendance. If that makes sense? Which days are the least attended is a no-brainer, right? And so to increase the number of days we have school in session on days that are the least attended, I don't think is the right direction to go. If that makes sense. Can we run an attendance report? Can we get that data for all staff and students? And see what days are least attended?
I think that there is some need for further discussion on this, and I don't think it's anything that we can resolve tonight. I would strongly encourage us to move this to a work study session so we can have more information from both sides.
That's a very good suggestion.
And let's move on to number 4 in the superintendent's report.
So our high school HVAC project update, we finally got construction manager and architect working together, contract signed. They have met and started planning for this, and so their recommendation is nothing is going to be done this year. It's going to have to wait until spring of 23. And the reason they say that is because they want to finish it. They want
in 1 year.
We're talking about HVAC, the units, the strengthening of the roof, the materials that you need for all that construction, as well as the HVAC units. Getting them here right now is just not, with the supply chain issues, is not within the realm of possibility.
So will they cost twice as much in a year?
Well, we hope not. We don't think so, but
It could come down. You never know. It could go either way.
could go either way.
And the money that we're using is available, it needs to be spent by
September 30th of 2024.
24.
Okay.
How much disruption do we feel like that'll affect of the students in classroom time? Are the builders looking at that at all?
I think that's why they're gonna save it for the spring of 23, so they can get it done as soon as kids leave and before they come back.
Okay.
So right now to do it is just not feasible in the timeline given. So we don't think we could get the products, materials here in time in order to complete the project before school starts in the fall.
And we're okay with our grant as far as long as we've got it scheduled, we're good, right?
It's approved and we have to spend it before 2024, September 30th, 2024. So number 5, policy JECB, as you know, we are doing an online school and are proposing new language. I have consulted with the attorney for the state of Oregon with OSBA who does all this, and this is the language that he proposed with our online school as far as enrollment for that. That language I've said there. And as I had given last month's update on MyTech High, I reported that we had 24 students, but because we started at semester, a lot of the schools had reached their 3% threshold. So the state of Oregon allows schools to deny students leaving their boundaries to attend an online charter school if they are over 3% of their enrollment.
What if they move?
If you move, that's different.
Oh.
But if you live within the boundary,
Oh.
they can deny anything above 3% because that allows schools to protect their money, right? The money that comes to them per student. And so a lot of, right now, starting mid-semester, a lot of the schools have reached that 3%, so they're just denying without even considering. But thankfully, I've been on the phone with quite a few superintendents, or at least the department that handles this. And we've had discussions about how to educate them because this is new to them. This is a new concept. ODE, we've met with them multiple times, Ryan and I, and this is something that they have given full approval to. It's new to them too. So we're trying to figure out how to move forward with this, but we have officially 11 students today that are fully registered through all the processes. Their districts have signed them out. So our pilot now has 11.
And they are from what areas?
The students today were Tigard Tualatin. I think it was 5 from Tigard Tualatin. So Oregon City is still holding. I was actually on the phone with Don Grotting the other day. There was a couple from Beaverton that he was like, "What are you doing over there?" So it was a fun discussion. So anyway, so that's where we are with that.
So that'll hold steady for the rest of this semester.
For sure. We hope so. We don't think people are going to withdraw, but 11 for sure. And I think there may be some pending that the districts are still considering their paperwork, trying to go through the process, whatever process they have for 3% to determine. So Tigard Tualatin approved it based on a hardship. They're already at 3%, but these were hardship students because they've never attended their schools and they don't want to attend their schools. And so why would they get denied by changing program? They were with one program, didn't want to do that anymore because it wasn't working for them. So they're trying our program and they got denied. And they're like, why are you denying us? You know, because it was mid-semester, right?
Right.
They'd already reached the 3%.
Well, that 3% doesn't count for NISA, and that was something we had to call the school districts and tell them the 3% doesn't work. That's for charter schools. We are not a charter school, and so you can't just deny because of the 3% because it does not, it doesn't affect NISA, right? And so that's what Dr. Johnson was on the phone and said, we're not a charter school. We're not, so 3% doesn't work, so it has to be another one. And then as soon as they get past that barrier, then doors started putting up. And so that's what Dr. Johnson's been doing. He's been on the phone just, and, you know, do you understand our program? Do you know, and I think one of the,
and they don't,
talk to, I think it was Tigard Tualatin saying, well, these kids aren't even in our system. And I know we talked about this, that, you know, yeah, they're homeschool kids. You've never seen them. They've never been in your front door. They don't even know where your district office is. And so, but anyway, it's really just calling people and informing them so districts can just release them. So like I said, we got 5 today.
So do we have a cutoff date for registrations for this initial turnout? What is our cutoff date?
Well, we had wanted to already have it, but
Right.
because the districts are still considering paperwork, we don't know what date to make it, you know what I mean? I'm trying to get answers from, I think it's Oregon City that I'm waiting on right now. So
these are kids that have already been approved, our initial 24, that we've already approved. So we're not accepting new ones to kind of fill that. Basically, that 24, we're trying to go through the process. So it's not new.
And the last thing I wanted to say is poverty to prosperity. We are beginning that. I have met with a group of the superintendents and the TVCC president here in the county. That is one of my goals as a superintendent, is to try to increase programs and training opportunities that lead to high-paying jobs for some students who are not interested in college, who would like to work with their hands and find opportunities that exist within this community, or in this area at least, for students to. So that is the revival of the poverty to prosperity that I think was going pretty well for a while. It died off for a bit. I didn't understand all because I was new, trying to get my feet wet, figuring out what was going on with it, and that was when it was starting to kind of fizzle. And it has been revived, and we're trying to get it going. So that is meetings with superintendents in the county and the TVCC president. She has power to create training programs for students. They have quite a few over there, and we're working with her on that. One of the things that she has expressed is, and I will say this kind of generally to everyone, I'm a leader of a school district, and I want to create programs and training opportunities for our kids, but I frankly don't know what business and industry need. I don't know. Lots of people do. Everybody, it takes all of us, I think. I don't know what welding is out there. I don't know what construction technology. I don't know what computer technology training is needed, or nursing, or childcare, all sorts of things that lead to livable wage jobs that exist in the general vicinity here. And so what we are trying to do, and I would certainly love to invite any board members, is to find industries and take field trips to them to say, what do you need? You know, whether they're onion sheds or what, machine shop or whatever. I mean, certainly I need suggestions, but we want to create opportunities that whatever we can do here at the school to lead kids into training programs at TVCC that are just very, you know, whatever we can get them started on. One of the things we just started, is Mr. Cruikshank still here? Was doing the Heister training, you know, driving a Heister. And it's not, it seems like it would be easy, but there's a lot involved with that. It's a lot of danger, a lot of training required to do that well and do it safely. And there's a lot of industry around here that requires that. So that's one of the things. Refrigeration technician, I mean, we've talked about a lot of different things. And so well, she and I and some of the other superintendents are currently working to figure out how to do field trips to places that would help inform us of how we can create training for the kids that are interested in that here.
May I interject?
Sure.
In one of the last Argus Observer articles, Dana Young did print an article in which she stated that TVCC is offering a CTE like fair, and they're going to have different entities there on March, I believe, 1st and 2nd, and I'm hopeful that our high school is looking at taking several of our students there. They will have apparently several industries there.
A CT open house that they're having to go cover all their CT programs.
Correct.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
We registered.
Good. Thank you, Bobby.
And then under the HVAC,
Yes.
may I say, I went to that meeting, Darren was there. It was very interesting, and I want to say that the construction manager is very cognizant of working to get the HVAC system done when we do not have students in the school. He was very concerned about that and talked about a timeline. So that was refreshing to know.
Thank you. And you think about the roof, right?
Yes.
You're lifting big units up on top of a roof. You don't want people around when that's happening. So that's a safety issue for sure. Thank you. And that's my report. Thank you.
Dr. Johnson, I just wanted to say thank you for reaching out on this poverty prosperity program. I think that it's going to be a remarkable thing for our students, and obviously how you mentioned that it fizzled out in the years past. To be able to put this forward to our kids again really stands to benefit a lot of the kids in their future. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Yeah. We'll keep pushing on that.
Okay, are you finished with your superintendent's report?
Yes.
Okay, Crystal, would you like to do a financial report?
I would love to. Hi, everyone. I'm excited about this month because I have something more than just to talk about January numbers. Shout out to Megan for putting together my packets because I was out sick last week. So hopefully your very first thing you have is the budget amendment I'd like to present to you. I don't do this often, but I do have to do this tonight. So in our budget that was adopted by the committee of the board, we had budgeted a little over $9,500 for something called the HBIL House Bill 2444, which is the Oregon FFA extended duty contracts for this year. The funding came in much higher. And so because it's more than 10% of what we budgeted, I now have to ask your permission to increase that budget so we can extend those funds.
And that's for FFA?
Do you want that motion now?
I think yes, now, because I'll ask for 2 motions and then you can, I think the finances are in the consent agenda.
So would someone like to make a motion to?
I would make that motion that we adopt this budget amendment that Crystal just presented to us.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Awesome, thank
Okay,
you.
motion is carried.
Next should be our packet for the general fund. The first page is the summary. This is year-to-date, everything through January 31st of 2022. And the next page actually gives the breakdown of what our finances were for that month. We had a good month. We brought in $1,186,000. It was higher this month because we received our second payment of, of the Common School Fund. That's something we received twice a year. We received it in July, and then we got our second payment. So that's what increased our revenue this month. Our expenditures were just a little over $1 million. So now we're carrying forward 3.2 million. And remember, we carry that month to month because the month of June, we don't get a state school fund payment. And that's when we process 4 payrolls and all of our end of year books. So we're looking good. After that is the summary of our LGIP account for the district with the breakdown of the taxes we received for the month. If you don't have questions on that, the next report I present is the Operating statement for the middle school bond. At the end of January, our balance is a little over $293,000. We're just collecting those taxes every single month. Our next debt service payment is in June. And that's all that money goes to. We don't spend that money on anything else. Following that report is the breakdown for that LGIP. We keep that money separately. And what taxes we received from the various years last month. After that is a quick operating statement for our early Head Start fund. We ended January with an ending fund balance of $45,642. After that, I don't know what you have because I didn't have my food service report done. Okay, so payroll. So the next thing is our payroll. It was a normal payroll. We didn't have really anything extra. We did end up running 3 payrolls, but it was just a check here and a check there after a normal payroll. After that, it should be approval of the bills. Everything that went out of this district from January 1st to, I ran the report on February 4th. And then if there's no questions on any of that, then there should have been a food service operating statement. And I'm sorry, I was out sick, so it's all not in order.
It's unacceptable.
I know. She said, Megan said it's in the pack or pile from tonight's stuff. So food service ending January 31st, we have an ending fund balance of $8,560. That's in the black. So, and then the final thing that I have to present to you tonight, most of you were here in July, I don't think you were, but I proposed a budget calendar. I'm using the word calendar. I'm scared it might be a long conversation, but hopefully not. This month I have to ask the board to actually adopt it, as there's things I need to start doing. I've been publishing when the budget committee will be meeting. Do you guys have it?
The
committee member list? Not the committee members, the actual budget calendar.
Yeah, it's in here.
Yep. Do you want mine?
It's just be for the recommendations from
Oh,
there.
it's okay, I got it. Okay.
Yeah, sure. That's it right there.
So what this says is, I do a couple things as being the business manager. I have to publish some notices in the paper. So I'm choosing April 13th and April 20th. That gives me by law enough days to have it published to the public. But then I'd ask that our first meeting would take place on a Tuesday, May 3rd. Try to stay away from Mondays because it's usually board meetings. Meet at 6 o'clock. It just seems to, in the past, to have worked for majority of everyone's schedule. That's when Dr. Johnson will give his budget message, and then I go over the budget, receive public comment, just kind of like a board meeting. And then we meet the following Tuesday, again at 6 o'clock. If it's not voted on, then we can come back again the following week. So I've scheduled out the 3 meetings out on the calendar. Doesn't mean we have to meet all those times if we get it approved. Then by May 25th, I have to publish the budget notice in the paper and online. June 13th is our June board meeting, which then I'd ask this board to adopt the budget, and then I have to have things to the assessor's office by July 15th, and that's by law.
I move that we accept the budget calendar as presented.
5 seconds.
All in favor? Okay, motion is carried.
That's what you wanted, right?
That's exactly what I wanted. Thanks, guys.
Good job.
It's a basic calendar. Thanks, guys.
Good job, Marlon. Okay, next is the consent agenda. Take a moment to look it over, and then if someone would like to make a motion to accept it as is.
I have a question on the consent agenda.
Okay,
My understanding is that Jacoby Hernandez is going to take over for Rose.
Yes.
Those are two different job descriptions, job titles. So I take it that Jacoby is not going to be doing the ELL part.
He's not. Yeah.
And so who is going to be handling that?
For right now, me. But we're gonna be working, RSLE, Gomez, our middle school vice principal, had done it in previous years, so she and I will work together on that for the rest of this year. Along with Rose, the three of us will work together to make sure that is done until we find, we're working on that.
Okay, and then Jacoby was described as the synergy, is that what?
Yes,
we call it?
Synergy Manager, Student Information Specialist, Synergy.
Okay. So, and that takes care of the student information portion that
Yes.
is in Rose's.
Yes,
Okay. Just needed to know that.
those are good questions.
any other questions or concerns?
And I would like to thank the administration for the correction on the Brian Beck's hire.
You're welcome. We're glad we got that corrected. That didn't.
No, it didn't.
Someone want to make a motion to adopt this?
I'll make a motion to adopt the consent agenda. For them.
I second.
All in favor? Okay, motion is carried.
I guess I probably should clarify. I don't want anybody to think I'm laughing at Brian Beck. What she found when Brian Beck was hired, on the form that was filled out, it showed that he was the candidate interviewed and that he was also on the committee. So we had to correct the paperwork. So that's what, we didn't want to show that Brian was interviewing himself, okay? And I'm glad Pat caught that.
Yes. Thank you, Pat. Okay, now let's go on to old business. We've talked a lot about the district calendar. Are we done with that since we tabled that for a work session? And the review policy of the JECD admission of non-resident students.
Well, I included that on my superintendent's report.
That's what I thought. Okay, so the old business has been taken care of. Let's go on to. Okay,
That's what we're doing in the next meeting.
In the new business, yeah.
okay, so we're gonna adopt it. And the new business, the inter-district transfers. It says we need to establish the number of student transfer requests.
Yes, so that's what, if you look at this paper here, I believe, to give you an indication of how many students are coming into our district, how
I
many
think
are
ours
going
is black
out.
and white.
Did you not receive that?
Yeah,
Yes,
it's
it's
black and white. Ours is black.
Oh, yours is black and white?
It's okay. Yours is pretty.
I know, I'm sorry. So it's interesting to just look at those. Look at the top of them, Harper to Nissa. We have one student coming from Harper to Nissa. Adrian to Nissa. There's 3 in our elementary. In the middle school, Adrian to Nissa, there's 2, and in the high school, there's 3, Adrian. So Ontario to Nissa, that's 38 in our elementary. Did you know that?
No, that's a lot.
In our middle school, we received 25. And in our high school, we received 25. So total from Ontario is 88. So the total inter-district transfers to Nissa from outside is 97. So,
Did we have a limit on it? Did we have a limit on it before or?
yeah, typically we have a limit. It's in the policy. I'm trying to think, is the policy here, Megan?
A limit of how many kids we'll accept into our school?
Right.
And why would we limit that?
Typically, what I like, as I've done this, the board, it's per policy, the board has to adopt that number or general, at least guidance for us. For us, what did we talk about, Luke? I'm trying to remember, Matt, Luke, Brett, what was the language we were using?
Yeah, we talked about paralleling the language that is used for the elementary. meaning that it will be determined, depending on resources and class size, and, rather than having a set number. It's difficult to guesstimate what we can take until we have built a master schedule. We know what our class size, we know what our resources are. And then I'm also, when we have students who have been an interdistrict transfer and they've been successful, we of course want to keep those and have room for them. At the same time, if we have a student who is coming here because they are getting expelled from other school districts, then of course we want language that allows us to say we don't have the resources needed for the students to be successful, and therefore their home district should service them. Anyway, but we talked about, rather than setting a specific number, setting the statement similar to what they do at the elementary and middle school, saying that it's dependent on resources and class size.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and so if you'll notice, just a quick comparison. So Adrian to Nissa, we are receiving 3 elementary students from Adrian. If you look how many we are sending to Adrian, from Nissa to Adrian, 29 in our elementary students. So when we start saying numbers of how many we'll accept in there, that is we have to consider all the numbers, those outgoing, those incoming, what it puts our numbers at, how many teachers we have per grade. I'm thinking of Mr. Murray because I was an elementary principal for so many years. You're like, you got to balance your class sizes, number of teachers per grade to take the number of students that are there, right? And so there's a lot of number. We consider all these things as we're figuring out, do I need 4 teachers at first grade or 3 this year? Depending on transfers in, transfers out, move-ins, move-outs, current. So it's a lot of, I'm trying to think, oh, there it is. The very last page on this. I was like, where is that policy? So it's the very last page on that one. Do you have it? Or no? I'm sorry.
No,
I do not have that. It's policy JEC. So grades K-8, maximum is determined based on class sizes. So we allow Mr. Murray and Mr. Rodman to say our class sizes, whatever the board would say, hey, is 22 enough in a classroom? Then we're allowed to accept up to that. So in the past, it's been 7 students in grade 9, 8 in grade 10, 10 in grade 11, and 12, or 5 in grade 12. Part of the reason we've limited it in grade 12 is because often when kids transfer to us as seniors, they're credit deficient. They need to be on track, right? So that's one of the criteria we try to say is you start accepting a bunch of seniors who are so credit deficient that that's going to mess up our graduation rate. We would love to help kids, but if we can't in the time given, that's going to hurt us in the long run. So I think that's what Mr. Jackman is saying is we would like a statement similar to what it says grades K-8 for Mr. Murray and Mr. Cleaver, maximum determined based on class size. What was the statement, Brett?
Similar to the elementary says depending on class size. I would just like to add the resources into that. So depending on class size and resources will be determined by the building administrator based on class size and resources. Now, if you look at the numbers you set last year, one of the grades we actually went over. I mean, it's just, you can't guesstimate this. The other part is, once you build a master schedule, you see your class size, then that's when you know, can we fit or not. This year, if I remember right, Bobby, we were trying to place seniors, and we didn't have elective classes for them because we had an influx of 12th grade interdistrict transfers. And so they were forced to take work release, home release, college release, just to fill their schedule. I don't like to be in that situation. Some of our class sizes are a little reasonable, but then there's other elective classes that we're full. Bobby, is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we had a couple electives that got pretty full. Yeah, so it was all great rules actually. So,
I also like having the process in the spring rather than in the fall. In the spring, you get people who are intentional, it's planned. In the fall,
That's why we created the deadline of June 15th, right?
Yes, in the fall, you get everybody.
I had a question. You
Yes.
brought up the behavior, so if a student is expelled from Ontario for a dangerous act, do we have to take them, or can we just say, I'm sorry?
We're not required to, per law. And we can state the reason by law, but what Mr. Jackman is saying is we'd like to be able to make the statement, we don't have adequate resources to meet your need. Adequate recesses, maybe we do have enough recesses, but not enough resources.
And I believe in our policy, it states that also.
If I have an at-risk student who's struggling with credits, and he's in alternative school, they're better served by their home school in Ontario that can provide those placements. We don't have those placements.
So is there anything?
And I had a question on the, do we have any numbers on the students that are in the part of the 3%? Or do we have a 3% cap to charter schools? Do we have any numbers on those?
That was in a separate spreadsheet, but it's not included.
But are we, like, we have students that are?
Yes, and we're under.
We're way under that, but we do have students who are going.
Okay. So, shall we move on to the board study? Mrs. Marnotto, are you going to go over those?
So these are new policies, by the way. I don't know if you had a chance to.
No, I was,
Yeah.
Oh, we need to make, we need
I
to,
need you guys to adopt the language on JCB, if you guys agree on
On number
that,
9?
and then adopt the language for.
so the language of how many students we're gonna accept, that's typical policy, and then I'm adding the policy from my superintendent report, the language for that policy
Okay.
to adopt or not.
Someone like to make a motion to adopt this language in this policy?
I'll make a motion to adopt.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Wait, are we voting on both policies at the one time, or are we doing each one separately?
Each one separate,
This is the JCB.
yeah,
Take this one right
of the
there.
numbers,
Right.
the typical policy, yeah.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, motion is carried. Now we need to make a motion to adopt the
language.
the new language. Instead of saying numbers, we'll say,
Oh, it's the new language
No,
from my
it's the new
superintendent's
language.
report. Yeah, on the online students.
okay.
And could we see that policy totally written out
Yeah, I thought
with
you
the
had it.
with the new language?
Well, they're the ones that do that. So OSBA does that.
But we can insert whatever we want to.
Right. So it would be inserted. Where is that? It's on my desk. There you go.
Okay, this is where.
That's where it will go. So if you have in your packet JECB, I made a little mark here on the side. That's where the new language will go.
Okay.
That helps.
Then I make a motion that we adopt the new language as proposed by Dr. Johnson into the policies as presented.
I just want to make a statement as a person who teaches online in a charter school that has enrollment that's all the time. I am wondering if we need to change the wording, because I am afraid that if we force it to be twice yearly, that if we lose a bunch of students, then we don't give opportunity for us to place them.
So one of the main reasons is high school. So you don't have kids coming in November, or things like that, and they can't earn full credit, and so that's why we try to do semester a big part of it is credits.
Can we change that and just say it only applies to elementary?
We could do that, it's up to the board. I know and that's with my tech, I'm working with them as well, and see if they want it.
Quarters?
We could extend it.
I think our semesters, I don't know if we get quarter. We don't get quarter. Yeah, quarter credits. But I'll talk to Matt at my tech and see if he's okay with opening it.
Maybe we could extend it into the semester, like we're doing now, what we're doing now, right? I mean, we're allowing kids to enroll, and it's 5 weeks in, 4 weeks in.
But if we put it into policy. That makes it good forever, basically,
Until we change it.
until we change the policy. So perhaps we can think of language that will cover that
Allow some
possibility.
flexibility.
It's good. Thank you, Megan, for bringing that up. Good point.
So are we gonna table it for now? Or- Okay, so let's move on to the board study. Mrs. Moranoff is going to go over those policies for the second reading.
These policies that we're discussing this time are the first reading of these policies, I believe. 'Cause these are brand new policies.
They're brand new. They
They're
just
brand
came
new,
out.
that just came out, so we need to, look at those, and I would recommend that we look at those, and if we have things to discuss in them, we are having a work session. I understand from Darren that we have been criticized for utilizing so much of our regular board meeting to discuss some of the minutia that's in these policies that we could probably get worked out in a work session.
February 28th. Then.
It's 6 o'clock.
Sure.
Yeah. So, and so just so the board knows, one of the things that the administrators have asked me is to share these, for me to share these policies with them. Sometimes they affect the buildings very directly. Other times it's just a general district thing they could give good input on. So I'm going to do that too tomorrow. Megan is going to send out electronically to all of them for them to review. We talked about it in our ad council. For example, if we're talking about a high school graduation requirements, classes required for that, and Mr. Jackman, our high school certainly need to weigh in on that and have input on it. So anyway, just I wanted to know the board, we're trying to be more inclusive of everybody instead of just us owning everything. It is a board responsibility to adopt policies, but it's good to have input too.
Input's good. Yeah. So Pat, do you want us to, we're tabling the whole discussion of this until the 28th?
Yes, until our work session, and then we'll bring it up again at our next board meeting,
Fantastic.
or at our next regular session.
Okay, and B is the budget committee members. I guess there's one position that is currently open. So are we just getting it out to?
I think it's.
Is it currently open or is it going to be open?
Michael Hartley's has expired, and so.
This is 22.
If you'll look at that, his expired. He's the only one. Everybody else is still current.
Well, for a few months.
Through the budget cycle.
Have you been able to contact Michael to see if he would?
Not about this yet, but I will. I wanted the board to see all this first and then see if that was how we wanted to recruit on that. Certainly I will reach out to Michael with the board's.
To see if he wants to continue.
Does anyone have any suggestions or recommendations as to someone other than Michael, if Michael?
Has there been any interest shown by anyone in the community?
We haven't really advertised, so not really. I suppose if we did advertise, there would be people interested, but because it's open, we'll probably put it out there as well as invite Michael to reapply. But the board is you guys choose who that person is. So if there are other applicants and Michael also reapplies, then you'll have to choose one to replace that position.
When will they need to have an application? Are we creating a deadline?
Yeah, we
I
will
think we
have.
should open it up and create a deadline.
So we have a information sheet for budget committee candidates. So I have that we will send out, or interested parties to contact us, contact Megan. She will send that out. They will return it.
So you're gonna put it like on the school website? and then-
Website, yeah, we're trying to figure out, we missed the about town right now, so we didn't get it in there. Yeah.
We'll just have to have someone picked by the April meeting, because you'll have
Have a little time.
to choose, because our first budget meeting is before the May meeting.
So if we have all applications in at our next board meeting, if there's more than one, we can.
You can decide interview them or however if they want to decide.
Wait and see what interest we have.
Yeah.
I just want to make a quick correction on the committee candidate information sheet. It has an old email address for Mrs. Tracy.
Oh, yeah.
That was just an example.
Okay, I just want to make sure that that didn't go out to the public with that on there, unless you answer that one too.
Hey, is there anything else that needs brought up before we adjourn our meeting?
I would like to make one comment.
Okay.
I hope we all know that the state legislature is in session and that one of the things they are discussing is a Senate bill that has gone on to the House that will protect school superintendents from being fired without cause.
For
So,
following the law.
yes, for following the law and
Adrian's situation.
Yeah.
for the Adrian situation, the Newburgh situation, and the Albany situation.
Yeah,
So
Greater Albany.
I'm just putting that out to us so that we're aware of that that's being forwarded to the House.
Thank you for keeping us updated on that.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no other comments, I'll adjourn this meeting.
Thank you. Thank you all. Happy Valentine's Day. Make sure you take your cookies.
Make sure you go out to dinner tonight.
Or maybe another night. Not even just.
Yes.
I might make another comment.
Yeah, will you turn that off? So I can-
Right.